those constraints, and the creative side of me wants to see more interesting things on television. At the same time, there are more interesting things that are happening on television, more so now than even 5 years ago. And there's a lot of talent that left Canada that is now coming back and trying to find ways to mentor the next generation, which also really excites me.
Questions?
I don't know if it's too big of a question. I was thinking about Creative Commons licensing, and how do you guys see that affecting Canadian animation, maybe, or independent filmmakers? Maybe changing, branching out to different ideas, because you're not going to have to answer to a producer or or a network or anything like that. You're just creating your own films, putting them out there. Creative Commons licensing, like the Sita Sings the Blues, where everybody has, and it's just such a fabulous little film. Do you see
I really like that
growing bigger and bigger, or?
I hope so.
And
I think there's room for all of it. Really, what it comes down to. With Sita Sings the Blues, we've seen, and that's a tough one to touch, because it does actually create a lot of heated debate in terms of how she's.
Yeah, maybe I tacked it on you too.
Yeah, well, it's a good one, because she got a lot of flack for turning down some distribution deals.
Well, she couldn't because of her music. She didn't actually own the rights to it all. And I spent a little bit of time in New York in the fall, and there's even within that community there's a lot of debate over sort of where her missteps were and how she's actually maybe benefiting. Yeah, it's somewhat political in its own way. But I think what really comes out, there's room for everything today. I would love to see. I mean, in live action, you look at in the States and in live action where distributors, producers, they go to these small festivals and they look for who the next directors are going to be. They look for who's making short films, and then we can move up to other things. It doesn't happen in animation. I'm shocked that it's a place like Lionsgate of Vancouver, who are now they're a big studio. Why they aren't at all these festivals, seeing who the directors here are, because you need a Canadian director if you want to access the funding. You need all this Canadian talent, and yet you can be, rather than taking a big risk on $100 million for a feature film, why not make 5 for 8 each, and hopefully one of them hits. To me, it's a business model that makes a lot of sense, but you need to be working with the right talent. The right talent is there, but the companies that are interested to do it aren't out there looking for it. Our pipelines are kind of mixed up still, because we're working on old models, old business models. And that's what I think that, to me, that's one of the most exciting things right now, is that because of all this stuff, because of the technology today, new voices are emerging and they're communicating on a much wider scale. Someone like Jess is a really good example of how this can happen. I'm hoping that the more I show these films, the more people are going to see them, maybe people in the right spots are going to see them, so we can actually act on this thing. And all you need is one to hit. One thing hits and makes somebody some money, and everybody falls in line. We've got enough distributors now who are willing to look at $8 million features that aren't necessarily going to play in every megaplex. That you can do this way. So I mean, there's room for all of it. Sita can't be distributed traditionally because of the rights issues on the music, but it gets seen. She gives it away. She raises money elsewhere. So she's built a cottage industry for herself. And this is it. Like, I mean, the cottage industry approach, what you're seeing in gaming, as long as if you don't get greedy, you can make what you want. You can merchandise it yourself. You can get all your stuff out there, and you can do it from anywhere. With the website that I do, my goal is to be able to do this from anywhere. I want to be able to go to my parents' cottage in Newfoundland and do it from there, do it from Ottawa, do it from wherever I am. I'm working while I'm here right now.
If the internet is true, one thing is that we're even more involved in finding ways to use that, not necessarily to your advantage, but using that community to not only listen to them, but interact with them, will help you as a storyteller. And if you so desire to become an internationally acclaimed filmmaker, it's really not as hard as it used to be.
There's a level of accessibility now that just has never existed, and that trickles down to everybody in this room.
And we're known around the world for our talent. We are. I mean, children's
Not
television.
us.
Not us. No. But children's television in Canada is known around the world to be some of the best produced, and that's something to be proud of. And it sometimes takes somebody from outside the country to say it, which I've had some years.
Suppose we can work on the National Arts Council.
Yeah.
Distribution, traditional distribution for feature film in Canada has always been around, but we don't rely on traditional distribution. Any other questions?
Quiet crowd.
Yeah, okay, well, everybody's following over, I think so.
Don't blame me.
So, thanks, I guess. You're all week. Try the deal.
Thank you, guys.
Sorry, I wasn't in the other booth. Well, Jared took over for the camera.
What they're going to do today is talk about Animation Canada. Robbie's got ages of experience in animation and television, and Mike is an animator, businessman, teacher, and recruiter, and he's got a site called
Canadian Animation Resources.
Canadian Animation Resources.
If I ever do it again, I'll have a much shorter name.
So he's trying to connect all of us with everybody else out there as well, and all of them with us. So thank you for it.
All right. I've met a lot of you guys at this point already, and I think a lot of you know Rob. He's been working around here for a couple of years now. I do this a lot more to international crowds, where I kind of go out and I show sort of what's going on in animation in Canada. So I'm hoping that you may have seen, we're going to watch a couple of short films. Some of them I know you haven't seen because they're not, there's nobody next. I'm hoping maybe you're familiar with some of what we're going to talk about today. Basically, just quickly here, I run Canadian Animation Resources. I know I've done this already with a good handful of people in here in this room. But basically, our goal at Canadian Animation Resources is to, and what I think we've done pretty successfully so far, is to create sort of the online destination for our animation community. I really stress that word, community, above industry, above anything else. We in Canada have this really interesting collection of varied bodies of animators. The NFB, which is sort of its own entity in Canada, a lot of which is primarily out of Montreal, but it exists across the country. We have our industry, TV, film, which is growing. Gaming industry is something that is huge, but it sort of exists in and of itself. I'm getting to be a little more familiar with it, but I can't speak too much to that one at this point. And then there's this other sort of hybrid independent area where you get truly independent filmmakers who are not working with the NFB, some of whom work in the industry during the day and make their own films at night, and find time to eat a dog somewhere in the middle. And really interesting content gets generated in Canada. Really interesting, amazing content. And that's always been the case here. A little background quickly, and this is just quick notes. I don't know how much of the history of our animation in community in Canada you guys are all that familiar with. Coming from Ottawa, we're kind of where it all started. The one name I hope everybody knows, Norman McLaren, one of our great exports, and himself an import to Canada. If you've ever seen Neighbours, Neighbours is a stop motion film that was done. It's a biting commentary on world politics and war. That was shot right in Ottawa. And at the same time, we had a company called Crawley Films, which, and they were mostly doing stuff for government contracts, I think. But we immediately started out with this sort of independent animation, experimental animation thing, and this really commercial contract kind of thing that were coexisting at the same time. Coexisting. And from there, that's sort of the pattern that sort of evolved in Canada. We grew as a service country, but there are, at the same time, back when animation was in its infancy in North America, names to know are people like Raoul Barre. Raoul Barre was an export of ours down to New York, and he worked on all the old Felix the Cat cartoons, all that. He basically created X sheets as we know them, I think, or storyboards, that kind of stuff. He was instrumental in all that. And these are names that, yeah, they're not the Walt Disneys of the world, but these are Canadians who had a really huge impact on how this industry and this community grew. We then hit a period where we became a service destination. And that really defined the Canadian industry. In the 70s, Nelvana created things like Cosmic Christmas. They started out in a very different vein, and then moved into a really phenomenal business model in the late 80s and early 90s. But we became a service destination. And part of that's been absolutely amazing for our industry, and part of it's actually, I believe, has also crippled us tremendously. Today, things are changing a little bit again. Service has gone up and down, up and down. The playing field internationally is leveling. And we can grumble about that an awful lot when stuff goes elsewhere, but that's how we got out in the first place. So I think it's a little unfair for us to complain too much when India starts picking up service work. With new technologies today, content is becoming more and more and more important. We got a couple examples how individual animators are now leaving their mark on the industry in ways they couldn't before. I use this example all the time right now. We've got this girl in Ottawa named Jess Barutsky. Jess is probably 26. She was an Algonquin grad. She worked for John Cristofalusi on Ren and Stimpy, or the later Ren and Stimpy. Jess made a film. Jess is a phenomenal talent, tremendous designer. She made a film years ago, and it made the rounds online. And somebody at Warner Brothers saw it and liked it. And she one day opened up her email to find what she thought was a joke from, I believe, Lou Romano, producer at Warner Brothers, saying, "Hey, I like your stuff.